far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 women growing strong. 100 women where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached your destiny. Woman, woman.
As people of African descent, we offer this land recognition in solidarity with the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the efforts and deliberate intentions toward decolonization. As people of African descent, we acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us, express deep gratitude to its indigenous peoples, and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. By Kay Johnson. Welcome to 100 ABC Fireside Chats. 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women is a bold project initiated by co-authors and co-founders, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, Dr. Denise O'Neill Green, and Donna Jones Simmons. Our mission is to celebrate and archive the professional accomplishments of trailblazing Black women from all across Canada. The goal is to create an ever-expanding database available for current and future generations via print media, public and private libraries, as well as our website, which is www.100abcwomen.ca. In addition to our fireside chats on topics that matter to our communities, such as education, healthcare, entertainment, creative arts, trade union, and so much more, we offer biennial book launching galas and biannual symposiums. The co-authors and co-founders would like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for attending today's fireside chat. We know that you will find these sessions educational and inspirational. So sit back, relax, and hear from our brilliant and talented honorees. Good day, everyone. I'm Donna Jones Simmons, co-author, co-founder, and the architect of the 100 ABC Women project, as well as the executive producer of our Fireside Chats. Special thanks to our incredible technical support team, our moderator and panelists, who are the drivers behind our weekly inspirational conversations. Let me now turn you over to our moderator, who will introduce herself to you, as well as today's topic. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of 100 ABC Fireside Chats. I'm very excited to be with all of you today. So my name is Takia Wedderburn. and I'm going to be your moderator for this afternoon's session. I'll just introduce myself briefly. As I said, Takia Wedderburn. I'm a child and youth counselor. I have worked in education for over 15 years. I'm also a very strong advocate for the child welfare sector, and I do have a nonprofit organization which is geared toward addressing the overrepresentation of Black youth in foster care. So today I'm going to introduce our first panelist this afternoon is Dominique Deneri. And Dominique is a sought-after executive coach and consultant to federal, provincial, and municipal government organizations. She started her consultancy in 1995 and has survived one global recession, 9 federal elections, and the current pandemic. She is driven by her mission to help leaders create inclusive workplaces where Black professionals can thrive. Dominique is also a visual artist, and her breathtaking bronze sculpture, Black Man Rising, was exhibited at the Senate of Canada during this year's Black History Month. So thank you very much for being here, Dominique. So our next panelist that I'm going to introduce is Queen Kukuyi. So Queen is a Black, genderqueer, neurodivergent, mad multidisciplinary artist whose practice encompass queer theory in a meta-analytical, Afro-futuristic convergence of art and technology, mindfulness, sound, and noetic sciences through spoken word poetry, digital collage animations, AR, immersive experiences, and installation work that touch on concepts surrounding the Afro-futuristic meditative space. Queen has been serving the community for over 20 years, combating structural violence against Black and Indigenous youth through youth service resources, arts education programs in schools, community centers, and justice advocacy. She believes it is integral that exposure to creative practices and free skill-based opportunities enables us to vocalize our stories. Queen is also the founding, co-lead, and collaborative member of Oddside Arts. So thank you for being here today, Queen. And our next panelist this afternoon is Crystal Van Wistrop. So Crystal is a national manager for Women in Enterprise. She has been with TD for 16 years now in various roles, including credit, sales, and adjudication. In her current role, Crystal leads TD business banking strategy around women-owned and women-led businesses by collaborating internally and externally, and by educating stakeholders and colleagues on the WE segment and solutions to facilitate the success and growth of women in enterprise at TD. Crystal takes great pride in making volunteering an important part of contributing to the community and has volunteered internally for almost her entire career on various committees to support colleagues, as well as past vice chairs on the Women's Committee for the Vaughan Chamber of Commerce, as is a national advisory committee member for leading lenders. Crystal is married with 2 young children, and she loves to spend time outside, but her favorite pastime is movie nights with her family on the couch. So wow, so our panelists this afternoon, everyone, have a lot of extensive knowledge and information that we're going to share with you. So just to kick it off, we'll start by jumping right into our questions. So let's start with Dominique. All right, so Dominique, so your first question is, how did you pivot when the pandemic hit, and how are you continuing to transform your consulting business?
So the pandemic hit in March of 2020, and I was on a plane coming back from the Atlantic provinces where I'd given workshops for a number of months, back and forth. And that was my life as a trainer, facilitator, consultant, and everything ended. So on March 13, 2020, no more in-person anything. And that was most of my work. So I ended up getting calls on the Monday, everything stopped. So I started walking kilometers to work out the stress. And I started to pivot as well. So I had to learn all the new technologies that I'd put off. So I did 5 years of technological change in 2 months. I had to make everything work. So how are we going to serve our clients on a virtual platform? They took a while to get all organized as well. We had the funny things you know we'll laugh about in some years about everything that can go wrong on Zoom and happen. But we did pivot, as they called it, and we're able to then start building up again. Different clients, because not everyone wanted the same thing. And some took a while to accept that it was virtual, and we're just holding off, waiting for everything to go back. But so that was my experience. To be able to continue to do this, there's a constant learning curve. So it is not being afraid of technology, because that's really our friend. And for some of us who are older, it's like, maybe I don't need to get into that. Yes, you do. I learned the hard way. And so it is every platform, learning management systems for training, the digital world, the world of cyber attacks as well, Zoom bombing when you're doing work related to diversity and equity and anti-racism, lived through that as well. And just knowing more and more, educating yourself more and more, and surrounding yourself with people who have really good skills in that area so that you can continue to do the work. The beauty of it, though, and I'll end with that for now, is that it forces us as business owners to look beyond our borders. So I used to have Canada mostly. I've done work internationally, but as my place of business, that's where the clients were federally, provincially, some different provinces, municipally as well. And now I'm looking much broader than that, because I've been asked by people from different parts of the world, can you help us with what we're doing? And it opens up a lot of possibilities. So there's obstacles still in converting all the products to virtual. Capsules, smaller and smaller, people's attention spans are, but at the same time, the world's your audience, but the world's also your competitor. So anyway, I could go on, but I'll stop here for now. So that's how I've survived and are continuing to thrive.
Thank you so much, Dominique. Yes, I think if anything, the pandemic has shown us is the importance of being flexible and knowing how to pivot, especially when it comes to trying to rebuild your business after COVID-19. So at this point, let's turn it over to Queen. Hi, Queen. All right, so my question for you, Queen, is pre-pandemic, you worked in the youth justice and community arts sector, eventually deciding to collaboratively begin the journey to incorporate a nonprofit organization in April 2020. Your organization's focus is public art, workshops, events, and more. The lockdowns were announced, but you kept going and your collective goals shifted. How did Oddsight Arts pivot in the midst of a global pandemic and the witnessing of the very public turmoil experienced by Black bodies?
Yeah, so originally the plan was to do conventions, we do public art, we do all these events. We wanted to be in the schools again. And with the pandemic hitting, there was this huge uncertainty on how all these things were going to be able to roll out. Fortunately, we were a little bit already technologically inclined with like the Zoom meetings and stuff like that, and having done, events previous to that. But how do you do public art? How do you do public art when nobody can go outside? And just thinking about ways, we can still engage audiences through public art without them, necessarily being able to touch things or large groups being able to gather. And so really, with everything that was happening in the midst of the pandemic, thinking about how we always incorporate art into social justice, combine art and social justice. We just decided that, we were just going to keeping on, and whoever could come, whoever could gather, in time, we knew that it wasn't always going to be like this, that weren't always going to be able to gather, but it was still important, to talk about, the things that were going on in our community. So we just decided to just keep going and keep doing it. And gratefully, we were successful in a lot of the public art things, and figuring out ways to engage with the audience through like VR. So for instance, in the pandemic, we had an exhibit. Unfortunately, not a lot of people were able to gather, and we know some of the space, especially with government spaces, you had to have vaccines, and we know a large part of our community was still like kind of about getting vaccines and stuff. So we were like, what are ways we can make this accessible as possible? So we integrated like VR immersive experiences that you could just go on from your phone or computer and still, be a part of this exhibit. It was called Imaginuity. It highlighted past Black innovators, primarily in Canada, but across the world too. And to be able to engage the audiences still to the best of our ability. We had workshops. We did online workshops where we could still include community voices, because a large part of what we do at Oddside is trying to include other voices than myself and my business colleague, Nico. Big up to Nico, who couldn't be here today, but it's like a huge part of, how we move through as an organization, and just really pulling from our spirituality and our need for connection, and using those voices, those questions, those experiences to embody the art we created.
Thank you so much, Queen. I mean, I think definitely as an entrepreneur, as yourself as an entrepreneur, and being in business, I think is really important to have that creativity and, as Dominique mentioned, that flexibility, especially if your business is essentially providing programming and servicing to the youth population, and understanding that for some of those young people, they may not be able to have access to, gain access to Zoom and all of those virtual opportunities as well. So, I mean, I definitely have to commend you for really just using that creativity and really adapting with the times, which I think is very, very important, especially as you are trying to rebuild your business and going through a pandemic as well, and trying to make it on the other side. So thank you for that.
So even with our films, we thought about how do we reach audiences outside of the downtown core, different things we were doing. So we got like video trucks to go drive out into communities to display things.
Wow.
As well too. So just trying to think outside of the box to still reach audience that may not necessarily be accessible anymore.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. All right, so we're gonna turn it over to Crystal. So Crystal, my first question for you is, what have you seen to be a differentiator for women-owned businesses recovering from COVID?
Thanks very much. And it's such a privilege to hear about both of your businesses, Dominique and Queen. And I want to say congratulations, because it was no small feat to make it out of the pandemic on the other side, still standing. We know that women-owned businesses were more impacted than any other group, well, men being the other group, but we know that women-owned businesses were heavily impacted because of the service-based nature that they're typically in. And, Queen, you would be obviously facing the effects of all of the shutdowns and closures over and over and over again. And trying to think creatively around that was something that was, not surprisingly, because I think women are extremely adaptable, but it turns out, as we reflect on some of the research that's come out of the women-owned business space during that time, women were faster to adapt to these situations, to create new either new products, new product lines, new ways of selling their existing services, or creating a whole other subset of their business using an online platform that they may not have explored if this had not have happened, and diversifying their income stream to continue to keep the business alive. So congratulations to both of you. I mean that wholeheartedly. But I think that was a really interesting one for me that came out of that, of some of the research and things that we've seen, and also stories, lived experience, was having to be creative and how are you going to deliver those services, and experience-based businesses like yourself, Queen. Also, I think of some of the individuals that I've worked with in the past that have, a spa, for instance. You can't necessarily deliver services in a spa, and how are you going to do that and continue to drive revenue for your business and also continue to keep your clients? And an example that I heard about was creating all of these care packages that turned out to be like a monthly subscription almost, and something that she would never have diversified into if it hadn't been the case. And she was packing up these baskets in her living room and dropping them off to hundreds of clients in her community, and created that subscription-based community online entirely driven through COVID. So there's any number of things that I think we could kind of talk about, but on the positive side, I think it certainly demonstrates women's capacity to be creative, and continue to deliver their business in different ways.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Crystal. And I really like the fact that you highlighted the impact on specifically women owning businesses, and during COVID-19 as well. I think that's definitely very, very important. All right, so let's move on to Dominique. So my next question for you, Dominique, is, to what do you credit your resilience?
Yes, well, I think all of us are resilient, or we wouldn't still be here. What I did have to do is go pretty deep and accept that I didn't know what I was doing anymore, even though I had known for decades what I was doing. All of a sudden, the ability to be humble and say, okay, let me learn again and again and adapt. I think it's also the care we have, and I'm generalizing, as women in business for our clients, is to keep those relationships alive. So for me, it wasn't like, okay, I don't want to hear from you because you've just canceled some contracts and because we can't deliver in person. It was keeping, how are you doing? How's your family? A lot of us were experiencing people who were sick or very sick at the beginning of the pandemic. Most of my family's in the US, and we had some losses, and it was a very difficult time. And so many of the folks I worked with were in the healthcare sector as well. So it's not just for the good times, keep those relationships alive. You mentioned the care baskets, but and Queen continuing to have ways of lifting people's spirit and reconnecting them with their essence during difficult times. And so what I found was, when things started to open up again, or when people were interested in our services again and said, oh, you can deliver the same type of experience virtually. No one believed it would be the same, and so we had to kind of go, well, it won't be exactly the same, but there is a connection. It's important. So let's continue to do the facilitation, the consultations, the coaching online, all of these things. And the fact that we see each other like really close like this, you actually read a lot more in people's facial expressions and everything, for some of the work I do in anti-racism and looking at racial trauma in workplaces and gender-based violence and all of that. So I think it helps. So that fed me. So the idea that I could continue to be a professional and continue to support people during those times fed me. I was asked to moderate huge events after the lynching of George Floyd, and I had the opportunity there to see how much people wanted to talk and what was happening in terms of a movement I hadn't seen for decades that was growing stronger about Black Lives Matter. And so being able to continue to contribute to lift other people's spirit helps you. So the resilience is in community. We've been told that we're individuals and every person for themselves, and that's what kills us, really. We need our community, we need our tribes, we need our own people around us when things are tough. And so for me, it really generated a lot of interest in the work I did, because I was one of the few that was still in touch with all these hundreds of people that I had developed connections with over the pandemic. So, and then I guess I'll add, in terms of mental health, now one thing we forget about mental health is it's not individual again. Like, of course you can meditate and do your art practice and do everything else that you need, but you also, it is sociological, and the conditions outside have a big impact. So it made me more and more curious. I was doing work in that area to see how it was adversely impacting our own people, Haitians in healthcare, all kinds of situations like that. And so I got more involved there, and I took care of my own mental health as well. Like, I really had to take it slow. I was tired a lot. I didn't know why. We didn't know about Zoom fatigue. I was on the Zoom all the time. We used to have 1-day workshops, like on Zoom, it was crazy. And so being able to understand your limits and take care of yourself and nurture your relationships and continue to do the work that feeds your soul and where you think you may contribute to a better world in your little part of the universe, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dominique. So I definitely, I like what you highlighted around resilience, and in terms of keeping those connections going, as I'm sure all of you beautiful ladies here can also relate to that, about the importance of really keeping those connections, whether they be good or bad, in the long run. Because, especially, when COVID first happened, there might have been some clients or customers maybe that were, it may have been a little bit more challenging for you to service their particular needs, but still keeping in contact with those customers, I think, is very, very important, especially for definitely building your business is really important. So just wanted to highlight that the importance of keeping those networking connections, good or bad, because you never know when one of your programs or services that your business is offering may be beneficial to those customers. Is very, very important. Now, I just want to make note of, there's some conversation happening in the chat. So I see here that, so Donna was just sharing about, she went to a few shows at the Mirvish Theater. Shows were packed, and she just mentioned that it was a really great outlet, and I think, again, just tying that back to COVID, I think when COVID first happened, especially for a lot of businesses, there was not that outlet, right? Because we were all at home for long periods of time. Some of us, as you mentioned, Dominique, we were on Zoom for full day workshops. So definitely having those outlets is very important. Another question in the chat from Donna. So she said that organizations are having a rough time getting employees back into the office. After all employees have reduced travel costs, they can see their families at a more reasonable hours. Any thoughts on how we can get employees back to the office? It's affecting other businesses. So I will just throw that out there for anybody that wants to jump in and just provide their comments on that particular question.
I don't want to go back.
Go ahead.
Like, I don't want to go back to the office. No, but I think it's important to have some days, that we are back in the office where people can come and meet with us. Um, but for like admin, like being at home is so much so much better because then you don't have people coming in and out. I think as businesses, we're gonna have to realize that we're not gonna have people back at the office the same way we did before, especially for people's mental health. Like I found like having that balance, because even before the pandemic, when people were like, oh, I'm so used to being out, like I was already working from home, and going out to like do workshops and stuff like that too. And when everybody else started to do it, I was like, yes, now people can start seeing the value of the back and forth work, that people could still be productive from home, but also like coming to the office to support or have conversation or to have meetings, because I think we still do need that like in-person interactions with folks. But if it was up to me, I wouldn't want anybody to go back to their office full time.
Well, I have a perspective on the people who work in federal, provincial, municipal, but mostly the municipal, they've always had to be there. A lot of them, some provincial too, but at the federal level, I work out of Ottawa. There's they've noticed that the harassment rates went down during the pandemic because people weren't at the office. So when they looked at Black, racialized, LGBTQ to S, etc., folks who were uncomfortable in office settings and often were the subject of microaggressions and other behaviors, even not very micro. I mean, they call it micro. You wonder why. It's a major impact, but they don't want to go back. Like it has become, you can take it for a while. Most of them tell me, the Black employee networks, all of that, put themselves off camera. They're there when the racism and sexism, all this stuff starts to happen, homophobia, whatever, they can just kind of either choose to intervene or not, but they have the space. And so going back to the office is really triggering for many people. And I don't know how it's going to go, but as you say, it's important to have some time with other humans in the office setting. But if you're dealing with a structure where folks were basically exercising power over you in the work environment, you don't want to go back. So in the smaller businesses, I try to make it inviting for folks to come into the space. And I have a lot of people who don't even live here who work for my company. So I've always had virtual for 10 years now, folks working from all over the place. And it's great, but it's nice to have once in a while. The energy is great when you have people right there, but I don't have a microaggressive workplace, right? So I don't know. Big corporations haven't changed enough for people to want to go back. So I don't know how they will get them back.
Yeah, and just to continue on with that, tying it back to the concept of women-owned businesses that are able to be adaptable, I think it's imperative that organizations, especially in the environment that we're in with labor shortages and talent shortages, we have to think differently. I can speak from my own experience. The tools that I have today to, operate, whether I'm in the office or out of the office remotely, are far different than what was made available to me prior to the pandemic. Doing the work that I do at the bank was not possible to do from home on a consistent basis. Like, yes, I could bring work home and do some of it, and I did often, in the evenings and the weekends. But from doing meetings and having interactions with clients that are positive in nature, and being able to continue that momentum of relationship building, it really wasn't possible in the environment that we were before, but it is now. And so I think to think that we need to go back to what it was before would be short-sighted of any organization. And I think it's important to understand what type of organization we're dealing with. Like if you think about trades, for instance, and we need people in the trades so desperately, they have to be on site. You cannot teach a trade over Zoom. You can't teach someone how to, install a toilet over Zoom. I suppose you can watch a YouTube video to do that, but if you're hiring a plumber and you want to pay them, you want to make sure that they've learned their trade appropriately, or if they're building condos and houses, and softer types of things like teaching someone how to write credit and understand the nature of the business banking side of things that I was doing in the mid-market. A lot of that is not through a manual, it's through teaching people in conversations in person. And so I'm really of the opinion that a hybrid work week is ideal. It helps me from my own personal mental state to be able to get through a hectic weekend with the kids and know that Monday morning I'm going to log into my meetings from home and that I don't have to try and rush downtown to Toronto. It makes a difference for me. And our leadership in my business at work, TD, has all consistently said that they believe in the hybrid model and that it really works, but there has to be that in-person and there has to be that in-person component as well. I think I'm just repeating myself now, but I kind of believe in the fact that we've made strides, we've learned a lot, and we kind of have to push forward from that and see where we get to and that adaptable nature. I'm just seeing in the comments that Donna said her husband learned how to fix the dryer using YouTube. And I agree, you can use YouTube to learn just about anything, but we definitely do need businesses that are in person too, and it's a bit of that balancing act. If that's a thing, it's probably not a thing. Balance is not a thing. Choosing what we end up doing is the thing, I guess.
Exactly. Wow. So I think all of you really gave some really good comments and feedback on what that really looks like. And in terms of trying to get your employees back into the office, I think it's, as you mentioned, Crystal, it's really important to just offer that flexibility so that at least employees know that they have the option. Business owners have that option that, they could do virtual, they could do in person with customers, clients, what have you. And I think it also too kind of goes back to, what we spoke about earlier about the effects on our mental health, right? And that we can only spend so much time on Zoom or in virtual meetings. I think to some degree, we also need that in-person interaction with our clients, our customers, our colleagues and whatnot as well to ensure that our businesses can really thrive. So I'm going to, now we can move over to Queen for our next question. Oh, Dominique, give a...
No, just very briefly,
Yeah,
I found that in the knowledge industry, because that's the one I know the best, you do need to have new people come in at one point. Like now that we're able to, because there's orientation that you can do virtually. It's just, how are you going to be paid, what's going on in a very objective way. And then there's onboarding, which is really the culture of the place, the values, what's important. And you need to have buddy systems for that. You need the business owner to be involved. It can't just be left to, oh, you'll learn somehow, or even a manual or virtual or otherwise. So I think what I've found is it's really, really important when you have people working virtually to do a proper onboarding and to really, really support them. And then after that, it can be, okay, let's create a flexible schedule that works for you and your circumstances, elder parents, younger children, your own moods, or not just moods in a derogatory way, but your own rhythm, your own ability to focus for long periods of time. And we don't have to recreate the industrial age but on virtual instead. So it's I think it's learning the best, bringing in the best of all these worlds to make it an employee-centric, human-centric workplace. And I find that when that, sorry, when that's done, people stay. Like people say, oh, you're going to have so much trouble finding people. I don't, and some of the businesses I know don't, who treat people like humans and adjust the workplace to their needs and trust them to do the work, not supervising. And if I don't see you, you must not be working type of thing. And there's a big need to onboard at the beginning. You got to invest the time to make sure folks are ready. So anyway, I'm sorry, you were going to Queen and then I got all.
Yeah, no, I like what you said, because I think it's important, especially during the orientation period. I guess now going forward for, businesses, business owners, when they're offering their orientation session, that can be done virtually, as you said, because it's really just going over, the pay structure and whatnot, what the job entails. But I think, as you mentioned, with the actual onboarding, you really have to be in person, be with other colleagues and whatnot, so that you can sort of see the culture of the business and really be able to adapt and adjust. And that would be quite difficult to achieve on Zoom. And I would think it would also be quite lonely as well. You're just sort of doing all of your work behind a computer all day, every day, with very limited social interaction. So
yeah, you can
definitely.
lose people that way, but you can always get people onboarded in person if you've got a business that's spread out, but spend some time with folks.
Exactly.
one-on-one.
Or, as you mentioned, having a buddy system as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So
yeah.
being paired up with another individual in the organization as well.
Mhm.
For sure. All right. So Queen, my next question for you is: collectivism and African-centered spirituality is at the center of your work as a professional artist, but also as co-lead of a successful cultural arts organization. What is one way other companies can integrate these practices in the midst of turmoil?
So for us, we have various projects that we're doing over the pandemic, and it was always important for us to learn the cultures of the people we're working with and to find ways in which, culture-wise, spirituality-wise, that there were things that were similar that connected us, and to find ways to celebrate those. So for instance, we did a film called Rain, which was about an Afro-Indigenous non-binary youth who was experiencing the pandemic, but also experiencing, the turmoil in the Black community, the violence that's happening to Black folks in the community, but also the recognition, finally, of the unmarked graves that Indigenous people had been telling everyone existed. And, this is now a wider government acknowledgement of the things we always knew were happening. And through that, what we did is we exchanged medicines. We were in constant conversation about each other's spiritual practices, as well as cultural practices, and honoring those things through the journey of working together. We sat in ceremony, with each other. And that really aided in the connection, the bonding of the groups through this process, but also it helped establish our working relationship and helped bring us closer to be able to get everything we needed to get done in the midst of so much grief that was happening, especially in both communities. So I think stopping to honor folks' experience. I think you might have touched on this a little bit, Dominique, but stopping to honor everyone's experiences and what they're going through. And I know we're in a society where, you can't really vocalize in your workplace that you're not okay, because people start to figure out ways to fire you and put someone else that is deemed more productive. But the folks we work with, we strive to work with folks who honor those things where you could be like, okay, wait a minute, I'm a little bit overwhelmed right now. maybe you communicate what's happening, maybe you don't have to, and you can just say, I'm not okay and I need more time for something, and to be able to honor those things, or to create, like what you said, like a buddy system where, you have someone else that can support you when you're not really doing so well. Someone else can kind of take up the slack, as long as, you're able to support the other person as well, when it's their time to take their mental health into consideration.
Thank you for that, Queen. I think I really like what you said in terms of honoring the experiences within the workplace. I think is really important. And I think that if COVID taught us anything, I would definitely say that that was one of the highlights. Although, COVID was an unfortunate situation, global pandemic that occurred, but I think it definitely forced a lot of businesses and organizations the importance of honoring the experiences of their employees. And I know there's a lot of large and small organizations and businesses that have now integrated that into their system, into their mandate, in terms of, really just offering that to their employees as well.
Yeah, I always used to say before the pandemic is that we need to have like some sort of like days off for like grieving while being Black in the media or something like that, because like it really is traumatizing every time we hear about something's happened in our community or our cousin community. And I think it's important for organizations to be mindful of those things, because it sits with us. It's in our blood memory, and it's constantly being re-triggered, especially for those of us that are doing this decolonial work, because we're constantly immersed in it. Some other folks can kind of like not necessarily emotionally remove themselves, but physically remove themselves from it because of their work, possibly. And maybe they can't, but I know that there's like a lot of jobs you can kind of like remove yourself from the kind of like social impact. But when you're doing this decolonial work, not only are you grieving for folks around you or folks that you don't know, but you're also constantly like immersed in it and trying to, combat it in that work. Definitely takes a toll on your mental health. And, we need to acknowledge that in a lot of these workplaces, especially in like the social work sector.
We started calling it emotional labor and saying it's high burnout rates. Like, so it's going to be 3 years soon after George Floyd's murder, and most of the DEI shops and anti-racism shops that were established across the system in the corporate world, those folks are burning out. Like you're trying to change a culture from within, and it's systemic in nature, and you're trying to change a huge system that basically reproduces itself, and where there's a lot of inertia and maintaining the status quo. So I see them a lot because I'm one of the elders, so to speak, in my 60s, and I see a lot of the folks who were so enthusiastic when these changes started to be made come out now, and their action, and they're really tired, and some of them have stopped working or taken a break completely, or it's just very, very difficult to do this work because we're impacted, and we're also the ones who are speaking against that and doing the decolonization and the work that needs to be done. So it's a long haul. That's why we need allies. That's why we need a lot of folks to see what we see and push for change from their perspective as well, because it's really hard work to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think the importance of really promoting the importance of allyship is extremely important, especially if your business or where you're working is in an environment that is significantly being impacted by the various things that have happened throughout during the pandemic, post the pandemic, and all of that. I do see that there's a question in the chat for Queen. So Queen, the question is, the suicide rate amongst Black youth has been extremely high during and after the pandemic. What do you think is causing this high suicide rate?
So there's multiple layers to why it's happening. I'll speak first from like personal / social work lens. So myself being Black, femme presenting, but mostly identifying as non-binary person, I fit somewhere in the spectrum closer, to womanhood, but not always fitting in that category. Not having a support system around you that allows you to completely be yourself and full as queer, LGBTQ, trans. A lot of young people were completing the act of unaliving themselves because those support systems were removed. Maybe they were getting them from the community centers. Maybe they were getting them from like a teacher or their friends, and having to be at home, especially in a household that may not necessarily be providing those support systems for you, was detrimental to the mental health of a lot of young people. So one of the reasons why we made the film Rain, Rain is in the beginning part of the film, I won't tell too much in case some people want, to connect us to do some screenings. Rain's being bullied. And that actually came from several real life scenarios with young people we were working with where, one young person, she, identifies as a lesbian. She's, I think probably 12 now, but at the time she was 10, and she had a crush on another little girl and told the little girl, and the little girl told everyone. And then they started to bully her online, sending threatening messages. Somebody gave out her phone number. She was getting several text messages from people, and it was all just like weighing down on her. Luckily, she had a great support system around her, but not a lot of young people, have those support systems around them. And it's equally, or I don't know if I could say equally because I don't have the stats in front of me, but for youth in general, their homes may not have been the best environment for them to be in, and having those support systems removed, or even just being able to leave the house, even if they necessarily didn't have like a great support system outside of the household, being inside the house was also like detrimental to a lot of young people, a lot of Black youth who experienced violence in various forms in their households as well too, and they were completing the act of unaliving themselves for that as well too. And like, I think over time, people start to recognize that. So there were some like systems that were put in place, programs that were put in place to provide like free counseling, specifically for Black youth, specifically for Black women and non-binary folks. But the resources were also limited because of funding. And so I think that was like a large reason why we were seeing that in Black and in Indigenous communities.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that, Queen. I think, yeah, as you said, I think it's definitely very important to highlight the fact that throughout, as the pandemic was happening, that for some individuals, it was not their home life may not have been a safe space for them, and that in itself could have led to their own form of trauma and whatnot. So thank you for highlighting that. Crystal, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was just sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, I have way more to say than 7 minutes. So where do I narrow it down to? I want to just take a step back and acknowledge the fact that, I'm limited by my own experience. And obviously I probably am not experiencing the same traumas that the Black community has faced. I think we as women altogether have our own barriers that we experience, but that certainly does not, and now I'm starting to tear up, it certainly does not bring my experience to the same experience that other of my peers, my colleagues, and those in just the community in general have, being part of the Black community or the Indigenous community. And, you know, it's interesting being part of a very large organization, because I think that those experiences often get lost, and the individual experience gets lost in the organization and the day-to-day. And I don't talk about this often because I don't want to make it sound like I know what the experience is. I don't. But when Barrett came out, our CEO came out and said, we are going to place a focus on our colleagues' experience, our Black colleagues' experience, our Black customers' experience, and we are going to do something about this. When the death of George Floyd happened, I really did wonder, what was that going to actually mean? And what was that going to translate to? And I'm bringing this up because what you mentioned about people being tired, people carrying that burden, and years later now, I see it in my colleagues, and it was a fast momentum through our organization where the Black Employee Network had always been there, just it became more visible because people outside of it wanted to know about it. They had listening sessions where panels of people would get up and talk about their day-to-day experience and what the trauma of hearing about George Floyd and all of the things that were happening then and now. And it's a burden that is unbelievable, and then still going through the day-to-day. And then they created a segment called the Black Customer Experience segment, and that team has been in place since 2020, similar to when I took over my team to take the strategy national. And they have been doing hard work every single day to try and affect change in a similar way to us for customers. And I am proud of the work that I think TD is doing to try and bring light to the barriers that are faced, because they are absolutely there. And there's no doubt in my mind that they still exist. And I hope that we can continue to contribute to equalizing, but that we're not there yet. And we have to continue to have these conversations. And anyone that's listening, I implore you, whether you're part of the community or an ally, we have to keep moving this forward.
Thank you for that, Crystal. And thank you for also as well informing our audience about the work that TD Bank is doing to really address this very, very important topic. I just want to move on to the next question for you, Crystal, which is kind of a segue into what we've just been talking about. So how is TD helping women-owned businesses? We have the strategy around women-owned and women-led businesses, and 3 pillars to it. So collaboration, awareness and education, and facilitation. And collaboration is one of the most important pieces, I think, for us in terms of looking to external organizations that provide non-financial services. Because as a bank, we do a great job in creating a bank account and providing those loans, creating loans for various different situations. But the wraparound services for women are critically important, and access to coaching, mentoring, networking, and those opportunities that are required for all businesses to grow and upscale and make it through those barriers of getting to $1 million in sales and continuing to smash through those thresholds. Not just about having access to a loan, that's a piece of it, but having the networks, the access to customers, the access to
mentors that can help talk about how to smash through those obstacles, or what did they do and what are the lessons you can learn from them. That's a critical piece for us in creating those relationships and impactful relationships. So it's one of the pieces that I'm most proud of. And we also have a champions network of bankers across the country that have done additional learning outside of the bank provided learning management courses that focuses on the unconscious bias and the barriers that women face in accessing a relationship with a financial institution, and how that comes down to the conversations of trust and building that that dynamic of being able to have an open dialogue, and also understanding the impact, particularly for women in this environment where bankers turn over all the time, and how to manage that and help to continue that forward. So we've gone from 17 to over 200 across the country, bankers that have done this additional training and refer themselves as a We Banker. So those are some of the things that we've done to help support women-owned businesses. And I'm really proud of where we've come to in all of this, with a long journey to go though.
Absolutely. Thank you, Crystal. And that's actually really great to hear that TD Bank, they're really focusing on the importance of collaboration and also trying to connect with as many women that have businesses, women entrepreneurs, and really trying to bring them along on the journey. And I guess also as well, trying to make it less intimidating, providing less barriers for women that are really interested in going into their own business. Because I think especially in this day and age, there's a lot more women that are really taking that leap of faith. And I would say definitely after COVID, I myself know quite a few women that have decided to take that leap of faith. Once, during the pandemic, when we were all at home and they had all of these ideas and whatnot, and then they just really decided to take that leap of faith. They had a business idea that they'd been toying with for some time. And then I think just having that time, that solitude at home. And it's really great to know that, that TD Bank is there to really offer some mentorship and some support to our women entrepreneurs. Absolutely. Now, there is another question in the chat. So the question is, can anyone speak to the long COVID that's impacting people's energy to work at full capacity? So I will throw that to any one of you, if anybody would like to respond to that question.
I personally haven't had anyone I've worked with that necessarily identified that they had long COVID, but I think I would address it with just like we address anyone facing a barrier or needing additional supports. Like once we know, we kind of tailor our work communications and experience to whatever the needs are of the person we're working with. We do everything through a strength-based approach. So someone says, I'll be strong at this. This is not necessarily something I'm good at. Then we kind of work through things based that way. Now, because we work with funders and different organizations, we do have deadlines and everything that we need to meet, but we kind of like shape it in a way that there's like soft deadlines and then feedback. And then people can also like reach out to us and be like, I'm struggling with this part, or I need additional support for this part, and really trying to work with them to meet them where they're at, especially because we work with a lot of young people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would support what Queen is saying. It's really about adapting the workplace to humans and not the other way around. And humans are the ones who do the work. People kind of forget that. I work a lot with very senior leaders sometimes, and I think they forget that and think they're pandering to some people who are just, they're not feeling well. No, there's some real stuff going on for everybody, and it doesn't matter what it is, mental, physical, spiritual. You need to be aware of that. And if you want people to give their best work, then create an environment that enables that. But it's hard because people, as you say, there's deadlines, there's project fund, there's things that we need to do proposals, we need to deliver a number of deliverables, we have to be online to do workshops, we have hybrid now, there's so much going on. And but you have the same thing for people with all kinds of circumstances. So being able to see people individually as opposed to having the one size fits all approach that we've had for all these centuries, it's doesn't work for us. So yeah, I think it just makes it's part of a workplace that's adapted to what people need.
I really like what you said about the human-centered approach, and people need to understand like the difference between equality and equity. And equity is the thing we need to achieve first in order to achieve equality.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just echo what everyone said. I have someone on my team that's been through the effects of long COVID, and there's no simple way to solve it. And so just understanding what the capacity is, and you know what is possible, and designing around that is usually my strategy in sort of any situation when, like you said, Queen, when there's a barrier, and Dominique too, like just understanding that there's a person behind this is the most important thing. And they probably don't want to be in that situation, and it's incredibly frustrating to them. So, you know, they're going to work as hard as they can. At least that's been my experience, as long as you're giving them an environment where they feel that's possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I really like what all of you said in terms of how you added to that question, because I think it's definitely really important to always remember that, as you said, Dominique, there is a human behind the job, the tasks, or what have you, and always putting that first, I think, is really important. And then you just, as Queen and Crystal, you both mentioned, and then I think from there, just having an understanding of what that employee, what they need, and how you can sort of meet them with what it is that they need, I think is extremely important. Okay, so let me see here. All right.
I'd like to speak briefly about startups, and because one of the questions you had preparing us for this panel was around starting new businesses, so it's surviving the pandemic and all the different forms and the hybrid work and everything that's going on. And I think one of the abilities we have is that creativity. I think many of us as entrepreneurs, we have to be creative, and we have to start doing things that we've never done before, and in a market that's changing really, really fast. I find that as soon as you put an idea out, 10 people have the same idea. The internet is such that it's not a competition. It's just that you have to work quickly, fail quickly, start again quickly, and I think that's where the banks would be useful. and we see spectacular failures of large traditional businesses, but for smaller business, being able to support the incubation and help make it more successful, and pairing businesses with each other, partnering businesses more mature with the startups, and even more mature businesses like my own can have a startup component. So I have a startup piece where we're looking at virtual audiovisual products to support people in toxic workplaces or difficult workplaces who belong to the BIPOC community. And so, you know, if there's an opportunity to look at the unique situation we're in now after the pandemic, and having businesses that didn't even exist 5 years ago, 3 years ago, you know, and how can we help the communities thrive, you know, as much as possible, particularly the Black community and the Black women-owned businesses. I think if you could incubate in some way, it would be really helpful. I know there's incubators in different places. They tend to be tech. It tends to be incubation for tech, right, Queen? And it leaves some of the other stuff that we do kind of, well, figure it out, use your own money. So if I had one kind of recommendation, it would be to really support all those different businesses that could be huge, 5 years from now, right now. And yeah.
I guess just to
Yeah.
piggyback. Oh, go ahead, Crystal.
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sure. I was just going to say, adding on to that, I think it's such a valid and important point. And we were having a little bit of conversation before we jumped into the live session here about the financing nature of startups and all of that, and the bank's role to play in that. And I was saying it tends to be somewhat difficult for the traditional banks to play in that startup financing space because of the higher risk nature. And it's not really within the traditional credit appetite. But I do personally think that in order to, get to an environment where we are fully supporting the whole economy and all participants in it, we have to understand what are the types of businesses that operate in all parts of the economy by all communities. And we know for sure that, women in particular are typically in service-based businesses more often than not. And all forms of service-based businesses, not tech, yes, and there's a growing proportion of women in tech than ever before, but there's a growing proportion of women in all areas than ever before because women are more present in the workspace, and I think that's incredibly important. But helping to create those connections, tying back to what I was saying earlier around collaboration, it has to be a connected space because, preparing startups to be in a place where they can get funding, whether that's traditional or non-traditional, depending on the situation, that comes from spaces like incubators. And I don't know if you know of the program called Ella out of York University, but they do have a tech component, but they also support non-tech businesses. And they've just recently received funding from the federal government Women Entrepreneurship Strategy. And, I think the strategy around supporting women from the federal government down has trickled into other areas, which is extremely important. Now, I still think there's a lot of room to provide a lot more funding for organizations supporting women and giving access to those networks. But I don't think we talk enough about how important it is for access to customers. We talk about networking and networking for coaching and mentoring, and that's all incredibly important. But networking for customers is also important because at the end of the day, you need a purchaser of the services, and opening up those communities and finding out where can we go to. It's hard when it rests solely on the entrepreneur. And, we know that that's not the experience of our male counterparts, to be perfectly honest. And I think there's room to grow in that area. And so, my team, we often look for organizations where it's not just focused on, when's the next event where we can all get together and have a drink, because yes, that's important and it's a component. And by that, I mean a drink of tea or coffee or other beverages, no matter what you really want. I just wanted to throw that out there. But, I think the getting the work done is what's most important to women. And, women want to get into spaces where they can create those connections where there's end results because our time is so limited to begin with. So, I do agree with that. And the nature of access to financing and funding for the startup space is very difficult. So we have to continue to allocate funds in areas where there are barriers, like the Black community, like the Indigenous community, like women, providing, startup loans and startup financing that are low or no barrier, including, how much it costs to access that financing. So I don't think I have all the answers, but I certainly agree with what you're saying. And it's things that are part of the discussions that we're having internally and with the organizations that we collaborate with on a regular basis.
It's changing the mindsets around what works and doesn't work for different businesses. So in the nonprofit, they always want to give us project funding. They don't give support to the ongoing managing of that business. Hello. And then they do the same on the banking side. They'll say, okay, we'll fund this part of it, but it's integral to the business. Not the tech part is the governance part, the network part, the social capital, all these other ways in which you can improve your products and services. And I find that it tends to be very, white male. It's like one little silo, one body part at a time, one little piece at a time, when for women-owned businesses, it's definitely more holistic, integral, it's seamless, it has to work together. And so it's going to take, as you say, Crystal, it's great to know there's allies and people looking at that. It will take some time. And we can also look at maybe the thinking, the barriers in the thinking. So if we have to overcome barriers to accessing traditional things that have always been done that way, you might bring some people up in there, but you're not changing the structure. Whereas if you start to think of it in a different way, it's like what Queen's doing with film, and then in person and on the phone. And if we look at multiple channels and different ways of supporting businesses, then I think it'll go faster than trying to fit the business into an existing model. So I think those 200 people you have out there would love to talk to some of them and say, okay, remove the traditional ways, like you're doing. You're saying, no, we have to look at the whole thing. It's not just a social issue, it's an economic issue. If we want to bring in 51% of the population and the large number of racialized women to an equitable market and workplace.
I think it would be equally important too for banks to fund startups to prepare them for these spaces too, because you're asking new businesses to know everything and to be prepared for everything. But I think having funding that preps them to be able to do certain things within that industry as well too. We're in the nonprofit sector, and it's like so challenging to build this stuff up on the structural end. Luckily, like both of us had some experience, and myself and Nico had some experience, and we also had like really great support systems around us to help us get started. So in turn, we're kind of trying to do that for other organizations as we're growing, teach people what we learn as well too. But it's additional work that we're not we're not getting paid for, that the people that are helping us that are not getting paid for. We've been very fortunate to get pockets of funding from 2 different arts councils. And so operational funding, which is like almost unheard of for like a new organization to get operational funding from arts councils specifically. But once again, that's due to like an amazing support system advocating on our behalf as well too. But like the money still ain't money, and we need more, to even be able to like pay ourselves. Because really the money is just paying the bills, not going towards, paying us for the most part. In some aspects it does, but yeah, like just on the structural end of building up like the back ends of business, there needs to be more accessible, because I know there are funding for nonprofits and for for-profits that help do this, but the criteria is wild for a lot of these things. It's just like, I need to know everything to get help. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand that part, right? So like, and I'm sure Takia, you could understand this too. Like, as social workers, we're working with young people, we learn about the systems ourselves, and then we teach them to navigate through it. But there's nothing really like that, for like real startup businesses where they, if they don't have money to already like capital to already invest in these things, then like, what do you do? How do you get started? There needs to be those systems in place too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that in itself is really, we can save that for another fireside chat session and going through that. But yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think it's definitely quite complex. You know, coming in as a business owner, and you're expected to know everything, or having a nonprofit, you're expected to know, have all of the answers. In a lot of cases, a lot of the criteria, as you mentioned, sometimes it's a bit intimidating and overwhelming when you look at what some of the criteria is for applying for specific funding, and it can definitely be very, very overwhelming. So I'm curious though to hear from all of you, as we are kind of winding down to the coming to the end of our fireside chat session. If you have any specific tips that you would give to our audience in terms of, you know, how you sort of navigated with your business, and anybody that's on YouTube or anybody in our audience this afternoon are maybe thinking of opening up their own business. They have a business idea, but they're not really sure where to go or how to start. If you could maybe just in a quick couple of seconds or so, or a minute or so, and just provide our audience with some feedback as to what you would do or what you did, and yeah.
Okay, I'll start quickly and say that most people who come to me, younger folks who come to me, they say, okay, I have this beautiful idea, passion, etc., and ready to go. And it's important to do your homework, but not stifle the passion, not go, okay, go just find a job. If you have something you really want to do, then to be able to, what do I need? So often I walk them through, you need this. I've been, as a consultant, I say, here's what you need to create your own little, place with a shingle on it, whatever you provide as a service or a product, and virtual and in person, or just virtual. You still need to have some good business chops. You need to work at certain key pieces. And I find that there's not a lot of training in those areas. So people do training, like, okay, how to write a business plan. That's intimidating in itself, but how to keep clients, how to I think we need more of that. I know there's some great initiatives that have been put in place, and ABC Women have had many people come and speak about them. And so making that accessible. The other thing I think we need to tell people who are starting off is what saved me was getting my clients to pay for my R&D. So, hopefully none of them will watch this, but I get the clients to actually, I pitch something to them and they say, great, racial trauma for employees in federal workplaces. Okay, cool. We're interested. And then we develop it. We have a lot of things, but we develop it even more with a contract. So, we kind of do it with one client, and then other clients go, hey, I want what she's having, so we are able to expand it from there. Because I couldn't get R&D money, I've always used my contracts, to get into fields I really want to have. So if I have a strong vision of what I want to do, I'm passionate about it, what can I do to get money to do that, so that it's not always me completely sacrificing and self-sacrificing. We could go into that a lot for Black women, but to be able to deliver something. So I found that's been the best way for me, is always, even my sculpting, I get an organization to pay the Montreal for a sculpting. I take the money from that and I put it into another sculpture that I want to do. So it's being able to get money to produce things. So it's not always you, and well, you're doing the work, but it's through a client, and they talk about it to other people, and you get more work.
Yeah, my advice was going to be, don't wait, start. So I think me personally, in the beginning, I spent a lot of time like, oh, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do it. And I just eventually like just decided that I was going to start to do it and allow myself to like make mistakes and receive those mistakes as blessings and lessons to teach me how to do things different in the future. I work from this kind of practice of like alchemy and transmutation. So thinking about even when like bad things happen, I sit with them, I receive them, I cry if I have to. And then on the other side of that, I think about what can I do differently the next time? Sometimes, I mean, you can't really do anything differently, but you can teach yourself how to respond, to the things differently. Yeah, my advice would just be to start. I'm a huge fan of YouTube University and Google University to start. A lot of the answers are out there. People always ask me about like, how do I end up like getting all these fundings or like meeting people? Is joining stuff like this. You never know who you're gonna meet. Going on as simple as going on Eventbrite and typing in, I don't know, tech events, free tech events, and because there's a lot of them out there, and going and talk to people. I'm fearless. I'm like I'm an ambivert, but when it comes to like something I'm passionate about, like I'll go ask a random person a bunch of questions. And you never know like who you're gonna meet, who's gonna be in alignment with what you do, or who might like, maybe they might not exactly be in alignment with you, but they might be like, oh, you know what? My friend does this, or my cousin does this, and not being afraid to have these energy exchanges with people. And by energy exchange, I mean like having like dialogue to be like, this is how I did it. And the other person be like, oh, this is how I did it. And not being afraid to like pull from those things. Because I think because we live in such an individualistic society, tells us like not to share information with people. But like at the end of the day, nobody is going to be able to do it the way you do it. Right. And if there's parts that, for instance, like, and I'm sure you can, all of you could probably agree with this, like, there's parts that you're not going to be strong in, and somebody else might have a company that does that and they need support moving up too. And then you just collaborate with them. They do something for you, do something for them. Maybe it's monetarily, maybe it's a mentor relationship, but like those things does exist. So be fearless and start would be my advice.
I guess it's my turn. I'll round it out here. I want to just touch on what both Dominique and Queen said. And I've often given that standard banker advice of like, ask the questions, ask for credit. But I think in the context of this conversation, what I'd like to say is, as a woman, you need to be fearless, like Queen is saying, and don't let your own personal barriers get in your own way. Because we often, and I mean from even speaking many times from personal experience, self-imposed barriers can be some of our biggest hurdles to overcome. And we often don't think about I'm going to add in additional charges for the new work that I'm doing that the customer is benefiting from, that you described, Dominique. And I don't think that that's a problem at all. I think that's something that, I wish everybody felt comfortable doing, but it's not just the situation you described. I was speaking to a dentist and she was telling a story about she's in practice with two other colleagues, and both of them are men, and they charge for absolutely everything. Like, she was making a joke, but for sneezing, the patient sneezing, they would charge for. And, she had an emergency come in and they would say like, I don't really have the money for this, but I've got to get it done. It's an emergency. She would, oh, well, no worries. Don't charge them for this. And of course the patient's appreciative, but that's their business. And at the end of the day, you want to continue to push it forward and grow it, and get, not having fear of what's someone going to judge me in terms of making this decision for my own benefit and gain. Like, it's okay to make money. I think that's my advice. Is it's okay to make money. It's okay to run your business to be profitable and make money, because when you come to the bank and you're making money, it's going to be easier to get money in return. And as women, we often say, like, or feel like the pressure of, well, I don't want to take too much. I want to make sure that I leave something for everybody. But take it. It's your turn to take it. You're doing it, and don't be afraid. I just close on one other conversation example that I had. I was sitting at an event with someone, and she wasn't a client of the bank, like TD Bank, but she said, here are my plans. I've run a successful business for 15 years. It's very big. There's lots of cash in the business. I've kind of done it on my own, but I want to take some money off the table, and I'm thinking about buying a piece of real estate. Like, do you think that's okay? Like, yes, that's okay. That's what every single other man is doing with their business. They are building it up and taking the cash off the table, and they're leveraging the snot out of it to put it into something else. And so, don't be afraid to make the money, because we deserve the money too.
Thank you.
That's my piece.
That was a great way, I think, to end off our session. So for everybody that's watching, everybody in the audience, don't be afraid to make that money. And don't be afraid to not only that, but to charge what you feel you deserve as an entrepreneur, as a business professional. So yeah, so I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for being here this afternoon. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to all of you and getting to know you a little bit better. And to everybody in the audience, we hope that this session was very insightful for you, and hopefully you're able to take away some really great tips and education from our talk this afternoon. And just want to thank Ms. Donna Jones-Simmons again for this opportunity for this afternoon. And thank you, everybody. And I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never